Welcome to Podcast Marketing Secrets, the place for entrepreneurs, coaches, and CEOs who are looking to grow their business with a podcast, become a key person of influence in their industry, and get their ideal clients to come to them, also known as attraction marketing. I'm your host, Morentin. My guest today is Henry Wong. Henry is the president and brand strategist of Vyoo, a branding and content company he founded that focuses on impact companies. The consultancy guides small upstarts and SMEs to 500 level companies. Henry's roots span over 25 years in the advertising and branding industry, including being executive VP, creative director for the global ad agency Saatchi and Saatchi. His industry recognition includes awards from Creativity, Clio, and Marketing, among others. He is the author of the recent published book, Telling Your Story, Building Your Brand, a book on personal branding for business leaders, entrepreneurs, and people looking to advance their careers. Welcome to the show, Henry.
Yeah, thank you, Al. That's a really wonderful introduction. Been looking forward all weekend to connecting with you and chatting.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've been looking forward to it as well, finding out more about you and also with your company, Vyoo. Can you give us a little bit about your background and like how you got to the present day?
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned my current company, Vyoo. So I've managed and owned a number of different firms over the years, bought and sold agencies and companies, connected with multiple entrepreneurs, helping them grow over the years. In 2016, back then, my former partner unfortunately passed away, but it got me to think about life and do a little bit of a reset. So I decided to relaunch this company, this consultancy, and to only focus on companies that want to do good in the world. So every client, everyone I bring on, every team member I work with is really focused on this idea of doing good in the world.
That's awesome. That's beautiful. So that's like niching down like that is super awesome, and being able to bring out people that are actually doing good. How did you come to make that decision again?
It was really more of a re-examination of life and where I was going. It's very easy to take on clients and people who really want to fatten the bottom line, and everybody does. There's no denying that. But there's something quite unique about wanting to have an impact on the world, do good. And that's where I'm focused on. And maybe it has a little bit to do with my advancing age. So in spite of my boyish looks, I've been in the business for well over 25, 30 years. And at this point, I'm really looking to, do the best I can with the things that are out there that people want to do, that want to come along to just simply make things a little bit better than we left it.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. So like you're like niching down for good.
Yeah. And it's funny you should say that because I thought it would be a niche and it probably like not, attract. It would only attract a small group of clients. And I thought this was a sort of a great retirement agency or a company that I can just take on smaller accounts. And but we've been busy since day one, and there's no shortage of people, and it really helped me validate a lot of my theories, which I've shared in my book, which is if you have a purpose behind what you're setting out to do, if you have a mission behind what you're looking to do, you'll attract like-minded people. Unfortunately, I've been able to do that with clients. People simply want to be part of this endeavor because it's quite sincere. It's not something that is simply a set of words on the wall. So it's in that way, I think it's worked out really well. And I find I actually have to turn away more people than I take on, which is not a bad scenario to be in.
Yeah, for sure. And so speaking of your book, telling your story, building your brand, is the Well, first off, let me backtrack a second here,
Sure.
but with you mentioned like doing business with people that want to do good and make a difference in the world, and how you've got an abundance of people that are looking for that, and that's one of the things that I found with podcasts and interviewing business owners is that an incredible amount of people that want to do good, in the world, and I could see how there's no shortage of supply, and how someone that has a focus like you can actually like keep the spark alive within entrepreneurs to keep that focus, because sometimes you lose that focus of why you started your business, and you get into just like a survival mode, and sometimes you lose your way back to your main focus.
No, you're absolutely right, Al. I think many of us who have started businesses, there's a spark and a passion that we often have been driven by to create a company, to make a difference, and or change things the way they are. And somewhere along the line, this happens to everybody. You're in survival mode, to your point, and you're busy working the business rather than building the business, or losing track of why you started it in the first place.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So tell us about your book, and like what it's about, and what sparked you to write it.
Uh, I think it really was sparked by COVID. So in my city, we were locked down during the pandemic, and I had a little bit more free time. So every Saturday morning, I would get up and spend a few hours putting notes together, because I had a methodology that I really want to share with people. I was getting approached by business people who often didn't have a large budget to begin with, and I realized that fortunately or unfortunately, I'm at the state where I can set a type of fee that is fitting of the perhaps the knowledge that I have. But many of them couldn't really afford the consultancy fees that I would provide on a personal basis. Many could, some weren't. So I want to create something that would be a little bit of a do-it-yourself guide, and that really formed the book itself. So in it, it really maps out my methodology for how to realize your brand, and I apply a lot of the learning that I've developed over the years for products and services, and now I tied it to people brands, because it really is one and the same. You market it the same, you think of it the same. If you apply the same discipline and the steps towards it, you'll be able to realize your brand and have something that is really quite unique in the market, or at least within your space. And a lot of that, again, comes back to what we talked in the beginning, which is outlining what your purpose is so that you could track like-minded people.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So and so is like defining your story and the way you tell your story, is that part of it?
Very much so. And again, it goes back to my roots in advertising. So I used to spend a lot of time, I came from the creative side of it, in which we,
Mhm.
get paid actually to come up with ideas. And what we began doing was breaking down really the format of a lot of the way commercials are structured. And it's not any different than most stories that are told. You set forward a problem, there's a solution that's provided by the brand, and then there's a conclusion or a call to action. So that very simple structure can be easily followed by most people. When we often are asked, tell me a little bit about yourself, or tell me about your company or your brand, often people get into this long, unfortunate diatribe of, how it started and the origins and that, which may or may not be relevant to the person listening to it. So often, and you know this yourself, because I've had a pleasure of listening to a few of your podcasts, and you understand really quite well, Al, that it isn't about selling a product or service. It's really about selling a solution to a problem. So if you can understand that and you can present it in a story form, then people will react to it. They'll connect with you on that level.
Yeah, for sure. That's and it sort of seems counterintuitive, sometimes when you tell
Mhm.
people that, but I've experienced it firsthand where, I've been Mr. Professional, and uh, been like a guest on shows or whatever, and it's all business, 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 and it's tell me about this and that, and then I I was having, that, and then I went on this one live stream where the guy was just super popular, and he had a ton of people. It was all foreign to me, but he had me tell my story,
Hmm.
and he just like there was no like questions or anything. He's all, you have an amazing story, just tell your story. And like, and he's all, here, you could have the screen, whatever. I didn't have any presentation, but I connected with so many people on that, and they actually became customers and all this stuff, it was for the product side, the wellness side. And it's amazing. So there is so much truth into what you just said.
Well,
Yeah.
I think exactly. I mean, before we started and we began chatting on air, you told me a little bit of your background and the products that you have in the background, and how you lost vision through glaucoma, and you found a solution through CBD oil, and that's an amazing story, and it's a firsthand, but it really validates what you're doing. But and at another time we'd probably get into greater detail, but you've mapped out like the essence of a great story that leads to the solution, and that for a lot of people it doesn't necessarily come intuitively, but I think with that, and most people have that reason for why they started the company or why they're doing what they're doing, that can provide a solution to people. And if you can center on that, then you really have the beginnings of a story, and that really is part of the book. That's the execution of it, but there's number of steps that we go through before that, and it's almost like a bit of an exercise book where chapter by chapter I can walk people through each of those.
That's awesome. Yeah, because there's obviously more steps than just the actual thing itself, and developing it in a way that you can communicate it properly. That's what your book helps with.
Exactly. A little bit of, I guess, a self-help for business people, but it's an
Yeah.
easy read, and I've gotten some, wonderful initial feedback from people. It's available through most of the bookstores and on Amazon, of course. But so it's easy enough to get through. But I think the essence of it is really coming to understand what you're all about yourself. And so the beginning part of it really talks about how to understand who you are. If you were a product or a service, we would do some consumer research. We'd get into consumer insights and understand all of that. Most people don't readily have that, but there's some exercises, and there's sort of quizzes that you could turn to find out a little bit more. You validate it a little bit by getting people to perhaps input on that sort of feedback. Once you have a basic understanding of where you might fit in amongst your competition or other people that you're competing with in the marketplace, then it allows you to begin to find that right position, how you might differ from everybody. Once you establish that, then the messages really flow out of that. Quite often people jump immediately to the message with really out understanding the context of who they're talking about. And that's really where the discipline part of it comes to, the step-by-step approach that hopefully, it will get people thinking in the right way.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, and I could see that, like, if you just just trying to go for the message right away, but you need to, like you said, find your differentiating factor, what makes you different or better than the rest, and makes you, like, so you could be put into like a category of one, basically. Is that the thing?
It could be. There's in one section, I actually outline a very simple exercise, because quite often, if we're asked to talk about ourselves, or, tell me about your strengths, as we often heard in interviews or things like that, we would kind of, move off a little bit of target, or we might only see one side of ourselves. There's very few of us
Hmm.
that really have that objective view of ourselves that would allow us to look us at ourselves in a in a truly truthful way. But you get inputs from people, and you look at yourself, you get inputs from perhaps some personality tests that are readily available. But it's a very simple exercise. You write all these traits that you have on a series of post-it notes, and then you begin papering it on the wall. At the top of the you create a pyramid, and at the top of the pyramid you try to figure out what is the one thing that sets you apart from everybody else. So you may have a whole host of traits, and this is where the fun part begins, because you begin moving these elements around the board or the page, and you begin to see what you're made of, and hopefully you get to a point where you go, okay, this is really what sets me apart from everybody else, and that's really part of the exercise in understanding yourself, so that you can be able to understand yourself first, and then communicate it outwards.
That's awesome. And then with your company Vyoo, like you help people, get through that process.
We do a little bit more on a larger scale for products and brands. So we manage fintech companies, industrial tech, CPG, which is consumer packaged goods, as well, everything from ramen through to bottled confectionaries and the like. And these are often, they vary from companies that are at sort of mid-growth startup, or even full blown on the NASDAQ as well. So it's just, again, finding the size doesn't matter. It's really, do you really have a purpose and a reason for why you're trying to do what you're doing, and hopefully in a positive way.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I could see how, like, it could help all those different stages, and it's really cool, that you created the book, so for people that either aren't particularly ready, or they're unsure or whatever, or they, like you said, they just don't have the finances right now. And they could bolster up a little bit and then go to you after they've gone through your book, and got a little bit of success.
Yeah, I think a do-it-yourself guide's not a bad thing. Many of us have been in this situation where, it'd be, if you had loads of money, you could just simply pay someone to renovate your house. So the opposite is that you do it yourself, and you learn the skills, and you do a good job with it. Hopefully I can give people some of those traits and skills that they can manifest their brand and really understand it, so that they can compete better in the marketplace.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, there's a certain little segment that can use that, and try to get more successful, but there's also like that segment that I have call it like MMTT, more money than time. So they will definitely hire out, and your book becomes almost like a business card, or a calling card, just to show what you could do and say, hey, we want more
It
of that.
does. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think that's, you've touched on it earlier. It's a wonderful marketing tool for people in general. When you share knowledge, or the trend often these days is, we're told, be a thought leader, go out and tell people things, and share your knowledge. But I think that's the key, sharing the knowledge as opposed to simply talking. Being a thought leader means that you're sharing of something that is hopefully worthwhile to people. It's a little bit like the Martha Stewart effect. I sometimes think about, because she, hugely successful entrepreneur, of course, but in the beginning she was essentially sharing her knowledge. She was a thought leader. She told you how to make a souffle. She told you how to set a table. You want to consume it, so you began buying her magazines or books. You want to engage with her. You bought her dishes. You bought her appliances. So all of that is the brand extension that simply comes from content, a way of content marketing. You're sharing knowledge that people want to consume.
Yeah, for sure. And that's where the people with a purpose in their business actually comes in. And because, like, she's a thought leader, but she's a thought leader because she actually is an expert in her field, right? And I was having a discussion with somebody earlier today actually about this. There, like, a lot of people especially on like social media or whatever, they're just like, I'm a thought leader, like they just like made the decision or something, when they're not actually a thought leader. Like happiness can be a decision, like I choose to be happy, but you can't just choose to be a thought leader. You have to go through the reps, and time. We call it, in lifting, we call it time under the bar. Just like doing rep after rep after rep to become an expert at that move, or in that business.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Al. I talk a bit about what's referred to as the reasons to believe, and it was often formulated with many of the campaigns I worked with in advertising. So if you make a claim, you have to be able to back it up. What's the support for it? What makes you or the consumer believe that you are the expert or the better product in this way? And this often comes from, the more factual side of course. And as a thought leader, you do need to be able to provide and understand and be able to integrate that in any sort of thoughts that you present to people.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And so with your business, with the consulting business, you help people to develop that story, bring it out, and even like niche down, and find that specific crowd, that your story resonates with. Do you help them like decide on marketing channels and how to market as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's what I've referred to as the distribution side of it. So you may create a core message and you determine what you stand for, but now how do you share it with people? And,
Hmm.
and really understanding that makes a big difference. Because quite often clients will come to me and say, "Hey, everybody's on TikTok these days. Shouldn't I be on TikTok?" And the answer is quite simple. Well, if your audience is there and you can get to them efficiently with the right budget, then by all means. But just simply jumping on a media form and getting the word out there is no guarantee people will know who you are or what you're actually offering. So understanding that, I think, is fundamental to the marketing side of it, because these days, when I first started in the business, it was very easy to create an ad campaign. We'd do a TV ad and maybe a magazine ad and a billboard, and the rest of the time we'd maybe go to the bars and celebrate our win and creativity. These days, the thousands of messages that we used to be bombarded with before are now exponentially even more so in
Hmm.
terms of what we're being hit with. So how do you stand out amongst this? And this is really why it's particularly important. A few times you use the word niche, and this is particularly important to be able to focus on that. Who is it you're actually appealing to? Who is the audience here, and how can I best reach them? Because you may find with that, particularly in some instances like Google Ads, for example, you can target people geographically, you can target them based on a demographic or even better, a mindset. And that doesn't allow you to waste as much money as before. So truly understanding who is the audience, who is the customer for your product makes a world of difference to be able to pinpoint that type of marketing to them, because in the end it may not be what everybody else is using, and that's perfectly fine and even better because you're not competing in the same space.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. That's great information. And then as far as like building that uh, brand authority, and that thought leadership, and even that know, like, and trust factor that is so necessary. How do you feel podcast? Because you're guesting on a podcast, I'm hosting a
Mhm.
podcast. How do you feel that a podcast can fit into that?
I think the world is certainly changed, and maybe it's a result of how we're consuming things. They say radio has died, TV has died, but it's really just manifests itself in a different form. So it could be audio or video podcast, and it really puts more emphasis on the person to be a little bit of a personality of sorts. So everything that you do, if you're doing a podcast, particularly a video podcast, is an element. So people watching, listening to this will likely be judging me in some way. How do I look on camera? How do I articulate myself? All of that is practices that you put into place. It used to be you could simply have the written word communicate everything it was about your brand or a clever picture. But now, if you're using particularly podcasts as a way of marketing, so much of this is important. How am I connecting with people? Am I, coming across in a likable way? Am I expressing my thoughts in the best possible way that I can? All of that is really important, and I think that practice for people, if they're using it as a tool to be able to understand themselves and be able to make use of it, is particularly important. and there's no shortage of people doing the same sort of things. So practice. I know one person who essentially turns on her camera in the morning, 5 minutes, and she simply talks into her phone just for practice, so that in the event that she does have to perform or be on camera or be in a podcast or be interviewed, she's very well set for it. So practice makes perfect, and that's really what it comes down to.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So and yeah, so yeah, so that is such a huge thing, and people don't really pay attention to it enough. I think in their business, and it's really great that you are bringing that to the forefront, because so many times you start a business, you're like marketing, sales, sales team, and should I do cold outreach? Should I do Facebook ads or Google ads or whatever? And they don't take the time to really define that story, brand, niche, etc.
Yeah. Know thy audience is particularly important. But for a lot of business leaders, this wasn't a skill that was necessary before. To be actually
Mhm.
camera friendly. And what I've found over the last few years, I've been doing a lot of media training for clients to be able to help them. It used to be so that they could be interviewed by the news outlets, TV, radio, and things to keep in mind. Now with the prevalence of podcasts and a video camera as soon as you go online, it's very much about how you can connect with people, even though we're not in the same room, even though we're thousands of miles apart. How do you create that connection with a potential customer just by camera? And that's really where the brand comes in, and being able to manifest it in the best possible way.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And then actually being an expert and a thought leader too, because people could find out right away whether you are or not, on something like a podcast, for sure.
Yeah, very much so, very much.
Yeah, and the because I've been in business forever as well, and it's it's just amazing how things have changed so much to where like people do so much research today compared to how they used to. They used to just go into and get a recommendation, and that was it.
Yeah.
And but now people actually do research, and they do it right away too. Like especially with the wellness business is where I noticed it the most, is when smartphones started coming out, and Google became popular, and I would say something, and people would literally fact check me, during the thing, like doing a talk, and hey, I just checked, and what you said is right, and I was like, what, you're actually checking what I'm saying as I'm
Yeah.
talking, and then you refer a client or to another business, and they're pulling out their phone and Googling that business right away. So
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We live in the world of Google reviews. People jump on Amazon. We look what is online. And, for it's funny, ironically, most people who work in the marketing space tend to have a very low level social media presence. And I think it's because so many of us do it for so many clients that we just don't have the energy. Either that, or we're like the shoemaker's children. But either way, I do find that very, very true what you say. I meet people, and typically, within the next 24 hours, they're trying to connect with me on LinkedIn, and then we begin a little bit of a exchange there. But it's very much like that. There's so many ways in which we can break down these barriers to connect with people.
yeah, for sure, for sure. And so uh, is it important to make sure that you tell your story on the various platforms that are available, and instead of just focusing on one platform?
Again, you go to where your audience is. So your audience being your customers, so they may be consuming multiple platforms in and itself. You take, for example, I have a client in the sort of the grow light space. So within Facebook, there are 10 million people who do some form of gardening. There's built-in communities, there's built-in exchange, lots of little user groups in itself. That's a perfect place for them to be, because that's where everybody else is. Whereas if you go to, let's say, TikTok, there may be not much on the way of indoor plants or growing, as an example. So don't go there. It's simple as that. And that's often what the marketing experts will help you with, to sort of determine the right media to get to people. In and itself, there's so much out there. There's so much money that is being offered up or charged, that it really, as a business owner, particularly if you have a finite budget, it's important to make these crucial decisions in the right way, because you can't. It's easy for someone to make the recommendation. It's not their money, unless you sometimes have the people who have a little bit more of the attitude that they treat it as if it's their own money, and that's a rarity. But as a person managing the budget for your own business, you really, it is out of your own pocket, so you have to be very considered in the approach of what might work and what might not.
Right. That's awesome. Yeah, and that's so true. You got to take ownership of that. Do you help, like with your company? Do you help businesses to make those decisions?
We do,
Like,
yeah. Yeah,
so,
there's a portion of it that's referred to as a media strategy, where you do the analysis of the customer to see how many people are out there in that sort of group, and it's really quite not simple, but it does require work. Is where can you find the most of the types of people who would likely consume your product on which platform? That's sort of the step by step. So going through those filters, inevitably you find that, oh, perhaps this is the right medium for it, because there's a lot of people visiting. And this is what the power of Google or Facebook ad these days. Based on your certain media consumption habits, you're more than likely to be the right audience for it. But again, it's that fine tune that certainly helps. But in itself, I think it's also understanding, how big is your market, and how much of that portion of it do you want to grab, and that portion, how do I best reach them?
yeah, that's awesome. And so that alone right there, like could speed up the the growth and scale of your business, or be responsible for it happening at all, because as you said earlier, it's costly, to make those decisions. So making the wrong decisions and making the wrong decision over and over, can be very detrimental to your business. Like going for the shiny object like TikTok or whatever, like you said.
Yeah. So again, it's the right sort of targeting. Many people are attracted to the platforms because it's free. Right? I don't have to actually pay someone to produce the content. I could perhaps do it myself, but you are one of many in amongst it. There's no shortage of people who have produced some sort of post or video, and then you get 3 views, 5 views, maybe 30 views. How do you find that right way to connect with people? And that's really where understanding your audiences and being able to target them. And this is the power of a lot of the digital online advertising. For a little bit of money, you can sample test and see where you can connect with people.
Awesome. And like for your particular business, how do you market it, or what's your favorite way of marketing your business?
I think these days it's often just simple networking. I've got to the point where it's usually referral after referral. So it's not a bad place to be, where you're endorsed by somebody. But I typically find that when I do these podcasts, it allows me to share a little bit of knowledge, and people who are listening inevitably contact me because they're looking for a little bit maybe of a deeper understanding of what I do and how I can maybe provide that to people. So again, this is, thank you for having me on your show, because it's, a perfect way to get a lot of my knowledge out there as a way to potentially connect with people.
Yeah, definitely. And things like this also give people a chance to do that research,
Mhm.
and consume and connect with you. That's so awesome. That's one of the reasons why I love podcasting, because in the past, I loved public speaking, but the past few years have changed the world around. So like
Mhm.
you said, this is the new style.
Yes, yes. And you get a chance to meet probably some super interesting people across all
Oh
walks of
yeah.
life. Yeah.
Yeah, it's super awesome for all of that. So yeah, and I really appreciate you sharing all these insights. It's like it's so valuable what you're sharing, and if people just put it into play, I definitely recommend people getting your book and finding out more about that, and then it's just making that decision like, hey, can I move forward or whatever with something like that. So is there any like key takeaways or like a big idea that people should take from this interview?
I think maybe over and above it, one of the things I talk about is that if you can really understand your brand and append it to a single word, then you can really understand what you're all about. And it goes back again to the big brands. If I say Volvo to you, you would think safety. If I said Nike, you would think, winning. If you think about Apple, it is innovation. So what do you stand for? What is that one word that you can be? And if you can get to that point through some of the exercises or simply just understanding yourself, then you have the basis for really what makes you unique in the marketplace.
That's awesome. That's beautiful. So thank you for coming on the show and sharing your insights with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
What is the best way to get a hold of you?
So I have a LinkedIn, Henry Wong, at Vyoo, Vyoo, or on my own personal website, henrywong.co, if they want to take a look at the book. But there's also a way to connect with me via email as well.
Right on. Awesome. And we'll be sure to include your links in the show notes as well.
Great. Hey, wonderful spending time with you, Al.
Awesome. All right. So that concludes this episode with our guest, Henry Wong. This is Al Morentin with Podcast Marketing Secrets. I hope you have a successful day.